Peter Heather, welcome to the Legatum Institute this evening, when we're going to be talking about the role of the migrant in history. And we're going to be talking, in no small measure, about the role of the migrants that you have studied in one of the great mysterious periods of European history, the early Middle Ages. Peter, where did these people think they were going to?
I think, like most modern migrants, they had more than half an idea of what the Roman Empire represented to them, which is a much greater level of economic development. You get different combinations of motivation. Some are definitely fleeing political disaster in their existing homelands. So particularly the Goths, who are running away from the Huns and Vandals and whatever. You get some very big groups moving suddenly, which is one distinct type of migration. But you also get flows of migration. The Anglo-Saxon movements into Britain, for instance, are much more of a kind of wave or flow of increasing momentum, I think, rather than a sudden rush. Both groups had it in, or both types of groups have it in mind to establish a new, either and safer and more prosperous type of homeland. But what they have to do to make that happen varies in each case. The Anglo-Saxons are moving into an area that Rome has abandoned. Their migration is effect, not cause, of the disappearance of Roman state rule. Goths and Vandals have to carve out safety, a new place, and they are being ambitious. They do know that it's a richer territory. It's not purely running away in their case, but they have to carve it out in the face of Roman state power. And what you see is that they probably expected, they come from sort of southern Russia and Central Europe. They think they're probably just going to move over the border and carve out new territories reasonably close to where they lived before. And in fact, they'd done that in the 3rd century before, 100 years before these great movements of the late 4th century. What they found was that they had to reorganize themselves and engage in about 25 years of military and diplomatic negotiation with a still living Roman state in order to achieve these aspirations. And they ended up, well, in the case of the Vandals in North Africa, in the case of the Goths in southern France. How they knew they'd arrived, I think, is when the new groups that found the kingdoms are new alliances built on Roman soil from several separate strands of migrants. And they know they've arrived when the Roman state is forced to recognize them. They have political and cultural aspirations towards autonomy, not necessarily complete independence, but they do not want to become subsumed into the Roman imperial structure, and they can tell that they've reached a point of balance when the Roman state has to offer them terms that recognize their autonomy and independence.
So they want to be safer, they want to be richer,
yes,
they want to be more stable eventually, and to that extent rather Roman, rather more civilized than they are at the moment. Are they aware of the fact, or do they feel that they need to be more civilized than they really are at the time?
I think that varies from group to group. The large groups that come in a block and end up in southern Gaul, or again Italy or North Africa, they have to coexist with existing Roman structures. And the successor states that they carve out of the Western Roman Empire are amalgams of their military power and the social organizational skills of existing Roman landowners, and they adapt themselves. So the successor state kings talk Roman talk to make it possible for landowners who are very useful to them for raising taxation or keeping law and order, preserving social structure, so that they feel comfortable with them. Other groups, the ones that are much more disorganized flows, you end up in southern lowland Britain, or in fact northern Gaul, northeast of Paris. There's no sign of a surviving Roman landowning class. Latin disappears, togas disappear, villas disappear. In those territories, the successor state kingdoms show no sign of needing to accommodate to Romanness. And when the Roman mission comes to England at the end of the 6th century, there's not a Roman landowner to be found, no one who's claiming descent, and no sign of Latin being preserved in those parts.
Now, to a varying extent, very many of these large groupings knew of Rome, heard of Rome perhaps, the idea of Rome, but to what extent were they aware of each other? We use these big slab-like terms, Goths, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, but they didn't really conceive of themselves in those terms, did they? Did they use those names to call themselves?
They do use the terms, but they are not big composite units. Everything suggests that before they enter the empire, you're looking at confederations that weren't that large. And in fact, this is one of the things that has interested me most in my career and the work that I do. You can show that something like the Visigoths, who create a kingdom in southwestern Gaul, or the Vandals in North Africa, are new creations. They're new alliances put together on Roman soil, precisely because to survive against a Roman state power, you need to become larger. So each of these kingdom founding groups is probably made up of between 3 and 6 originally separate migrant groups who came across the frontier. And the logic of having to adapt to this new context in order to survive as independent groups, then that forced them into a process of amalgamation.
Well, thank you for taking us back already to our founding fathers, or some of our founding fathers, because some of us were here even before the Angles and the Saxons. Thank you very much indeed, Peter.
It's a pleasure.